Welcome to the SkillRanch. This podcast is designed to equip entrepreneurs, professionals, and consultants with skills to impact tomorrow's work environment. Now here's your host, Bilal.
Hi, this is Bilal Wasim and welcome to the SkillRanch. My guest today has an unusual background in Silicon Valley. He avoided computers in college, started coding as a startup sales guy, and got into Google on just one interview that lasted for 20 minutes. Bill Lennan's work has helped companies ranging from Fortune 100 down to local businesses, and he really likes the idea of the startup life. But Bill is more than just a SV product guy and an entrepreneur. He has also been a rescue swimmer, a Ferrari tuner, and tester. He started his kids swimming at 5 months of age. All this is the result of his passion to find, practice, and share mental wellness skills. Bill started this adventure in college and sees no end in sight. Today, Bill is the co-founder of the HAERT Program, which helps high school students avoid depression, anxiety, and stress with clinically proven skills. He also has a fun side project helping people get jobs in Silicon Valley and level up their careers. Welcome to the Skill Ranch podcast, Bill. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing good. It's a sunny day in California and the weather's nice. You can see behind me. This is actually real. This is not a Zoom screen. This is actually what the weather is really like.
I really appreciate your participation today. And could you
Thank
please share a bit about your background for the audience that are here with us today?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. So I've been working in Silicon Valley 20 plus years. Came here. I've been living here for quite a while in California. I got into the technology world originally as a sales guy, helping some friends at a small startup, and then wanted to learn a little bit about code so I can understand more about what we were selling, and then started writing code, and then led software teams, got into product management, operations, customer support, sales, marketing. I've held almost every role now in companies. And I've worked in, where haven't I worked? I've worked in retail. I've worked in recruiting and HRIS. I've worked in mobile, social media, and now the area that I'm really going after with my partner is a bit of a shift, but now it's preventative mental wellness, and we're really focusing on the high school market as our starting point. Partly because one of the things that we've found in terms of customers that people will spend money on their kids' mental health and education when they won't spend money on themselves.
So if we were to ask you, you focus on the high school students.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of problems do you see with that kind of a demographic at the moment?
Sure.
Especially
Yeah,
in the pandemic world.
Right. That's a good question. So to take a step back, part of what is informing us in this business is that I've been helping folks get jobs in Silicon Valley for the last decade. And one of the things that I keep seeing as a pattern is people who are fresh college grads, or maybe they've been out of college for a few years, and they've gone to any kind of college. They could have gone to a top tier university, or they could have gone to not a top tier university, but they've got a great education and they can't get a job. And the reasoning is not their academic background, but it's all the things they've got going on in their head that are soft skills, emotional intelligence, whatever you want to call it, that are getting in the way of them seeing the opportunities to move ahead and the ways to to get those jobs they're looking for. And the starting point on that really is high school. High school is a time when physiologically we're going through a lot of changes in our bodies. Hormones are changing, our brains are growing in a ton of ways, and also we're learning how to be independent. We're moving out of the home, and so even if we've learned some skills when we're younger, high school is a whole new game. And so it's really an opportunity for us to go in and teach kids, reminding them and also teaching them a new skill set that they can leverage throughout their high school journey, obviously in college if that's where they're going, but it's really about getting them career and life ready when they get out into the real world. I think right now, one of the interesting things that we're getting as feedback at the moment in COVID is that there's kids in high school today who are really stressed because they can't figure out what's going to happen for college. They're seniors in high school and all their plans for next year are kind of on hold, next school year. And then there's others who are freshmen, sophomore, they think this is early summer vacation. And they have a much lower level of concern than the adults around them do, for example, because the adults are much more concerned about delivery of the education. And in some ways, the adults aren't as technologically savvy as the students are. And so that makes them uncomfortable. The kids are really used to all the digital tools, and so it's not a big deal for them. The adults, oftentimes not so much. And so I think in a lot of ways, especially for the high school side of things, there's more impact on the teachers and the administrators across the population than there actually is for the kids.
Yeah, during the conversation, you mentioned something very important, and which was that some of the students are thinking this as an early vacation. But if we start right from a school, from high school, college, and university, this is a whole journey of education, journey around personal development. And if there's persistence there, and if there's an end goal in mind, a person can easily move towards the end goal, irrespective of whatever is happening around them. So my next question would be, how to help the students define their why, like the purpose of their life? How can they do that?
So I have a little bit different perspective on that. Partly because my own path to get here has had a lot of twists and turns. I didn't come into technology from a technology background. When I was in college, I was absolutely the last guy to touch a computer. Completely stayed away from that, had no interest at all. And when I started getting into technology, and I was self-taught programmer, you know, I opened the books, I talked to the engineers, and so part of what I think is that in high school, the most important things that we can teach kids is how to be curious and how to be persistent about pursuing their passions until that passion changes. Because the things that excite me now and the things that I'm doing today are very, very different from where my focus was when I was in high school or when I was in college. And like I said, in college, you know, computers are completely not my comfort zone. They weren't even my curiosity, in my curiosity zone. And today I'm on computers all day long, and it's completely fun and a happy place for me. And so even though in college, one of my counselors said I should go into programming, I was completely avoiding that. Like, there was no way I was going to go down that direction. And now here I am, right? I think with high school kids, less worry about lifetime because they've got a ton of years ahead of them in terms of what they can do, and more about just building the underlying skills to recognize that they can learn forever, right? The world changes rapidly. There's always new technologies coming out. There's always new science coming out as our testing equipment gets better. So teaching high school kids, one, not to be so worried about finding a lifetime goal when they're only 17, but teaching them underlying tools to be able to be successful at pursuing goals. And they may have a goal that they're going to go after for 15 years, and that's totally fine. And then they're going to pivot and do something different, and that's totally fine also. But I think I look back about where was I and what kind of lucky learning did I get when I was a kid, and really there's one of the big ones was my mom always said I could learn anything I put my mind to. And that was it, right? She was like, just like anybody else can, right? If someone can figure out how to do it, I can figure out how to do it. And my dad always said, follow my curiosity. And so, and that was it, right? That was kind of the whole thing. Nobody said pick a path and stick to it, right? And so I've had it's been a twisty path, but also one that's had me be very happy. And there's been great things that I've learned along the way that are completely leverageable in where I am today, but I learned them in a completely different industry.
Yep, like persistence can take us to our end goal, but then along with persistence, along with motivation, there are times of failures. On the professional side, some people do fail, they're unable to get their dream job. And then on the other hand, there are entrepreneurs want to make companies. There are very successful entrepreneurs, but then there are many who are never able to do that. So what would be some of your tips for those people who are starting their company or starting their career, how to remain motivated throughout this journey?
It's a really good question. So many different angles on that. So one of the things is to learn a set of skills, and this is part of what we teach is core mental wellness skills that actually help people recognize the value in failure and recognize the value in struggle and recognize the value in experimentation and figure out how to stay persistent and stay on track for what their longer term goals are. I'm a big fan of high performers who are very open and honest about their failures and about how when you look at their statistics, you recognize that they've had more failures than successes. Michael Jordan has some great quotes about how many shots he missed, how many times the team gave him the ball at the end of the game to make the game-winning shot, and he didn't get it. How many championships he lost. Kobe Bryant, who just passed away, also has quotes about that, about how the reason he was so successful was because he had so many failures, and that the only way to get to that level of success is to have more failures. And so I think one of the really important things that entrepreneurs or people looking to advance their careers, they're doing work of any kind, is to recognize that failure is just part of the process. It's part of the learning process. And if you're not failing, then you're not learning. And as the world is moving ahead and everything is changing today, if you're not learning, you're actually moving backwards. And so you've got to be thinking about, okay, I've got a hypothesis. This is leveraging the scientific method. I've got a hypothesis about something to do with my business, a client, a product, whatever it is. I'm going to go do a test to see if my hypothesis works or not, preferably more than one test, right? You want to make sure it's repeatable. And then I'm going to see what my results are. And and it's not a failure, it's a learning opportunity. Edison's quote about, I haven't failed at making a light bulb after 9,000 attempts, but I've learned 9,000 ways to not make a light bulb, right? That's a great thing. That's a really smart mindset. If you think about pro basketball players or pro soccer players, they're practicing shots on goal, right? And they're doing thousands of those a day. And a lot of those don't go where they want them to. And yet they still do that practice because they know if they don't do that practice, they're not going to get the muscle memory. They're not going to get the skill. And in the game, they don't make all their shots either, right? Games, they're not perfect. And they don't worry about it, right? They know that it's practice and you're not going to get not all your shots are going to go in, and you just have to be persistent about remembering that it's about the process, not the end result, right? And I think we get too tied up in I need this result rather than I need this learning. Jeff Bezos is a really good example of that, in that Amazon's always testing in their UI and their sales models and how they show you things on their website. And so they've got usability and pricing model testing running all the time. So somebody has a hypothesis that this particular experiment will help Amazon make more money in some way, shape, or form. And they've institutionalized now the idea of failure being a good thing, because we get to try this experiment. It might make us another penny a minute, or it might not, but we'll never know unless we try it. And so they do this all the time. And for them, it's just normal, right? Just go give it a try and see what happens. If it doesn't work, no big deal. I think that's one of the best mindsets that entrepreneurs and everybody else can adopt, no matter where they are. When I'm working with folks that are trying to get careers, oftentimes they're really afraid of networking because they don't know what to say. And it's very simple. I would say just say something easy like, "Hey, I'm interested in your industry. Can I connect with you on, would you be open to a connection here on LinkedIn?" And if people ignore you, it's not a big deal. It doesn't say anything about you. It just means that they're really busy right now, and this isn't high on their priority list. I've reached out to people for connections on LinkedIn and haven't heard from them for 6 months. And there's a bunch that I've never heard from, and that's totally fine. I'm not worried about that, right? There is no scarcity of experimentation available in the world. Lots of places to go experiment.
Yeah, to your point around Amazon, so Google also has that kind of a mindset, and they also celebrate your failure and fail early so that you can move on to the next thing that can work for the company. But to your last point, also around networking, so let's just shift our focus more to the graduates who are just coming out. Like, we are talking about failures. Failure is part of the process, but there are always outside circumstances that affect the decision, what is happening around. And these times are totally unique. Like, there was not such a pandemic for almost 100 years. So what are some of the tips that you can give to individuals who are looking for jobs? What are something around like learning that they can do during their job search, so that once they get something, they are at a better position, they are well prepared, and they're better utilized this time during COVID, where things are very tough for everyone?
Right. So that's another really good question, and I think there's multiple parts of that, right? Multiple parts to the answer for that. One of them is to remember that a term that I recently read, neutral thinking, which is not positive thinking, not negative thinking, but staying neutral. And so yeah, this stuff is going on, and yeah, I want to do I still need to move ahead in my career path to find work. Companies are hiring. The process may be a bit different, but people still are hiring, and they still need talent, and they still have business problems that they need solved. And so as somebody who's looking for a job, it's all you have to do is go find those people, right? Leverage some curiosity and look around. I tend to be optimistic in that I think that pretty much every problem has some kind of a solution available, even though I can't see the solution today. And the solution may look like hard work, and that's okay. It's a solvable problem. Elon Musk didn't say that getting to Mars was going to be a 5-minute thing and that it was only going to cost $100, right? He's like, we're going to Mars and it's going to cost a fortune. It's going to take a ton of time. And that's the game we're playing, right? That's the kind of attitude that people need to have, rather than just saying, oh, I read the news and the world has changed and I don't want to do the work to solve the problem, right? And so, yeah, there's tons of changes, and there's also tons of companies that are hiring. You just need to go look for them. You need to think about leveraging this time. One of the things I'm noticing is that when I reach out to people because I'm curious about whatever it is they're doing, I'm getting more responses than I ever have before on my networking requests. And I'm also getting more people reaching out to me for networking like you did than I ever have before. And so I think this is a time for people to reach out, connect with people they don't know, learn about industries, learn about companies, learn about what's it like to actually have that kind of a job. Update their resume, improve their resume based on the feedback, understand what it is that the job is really about in terms of what are the problems that a role is solving, not just the skills, and be able to start to experiment with that and send those resumes out for people to take a look at as you're applying. The best way to get into a job is by networking, and you got all the time in the world to network right now. And you've got a lot of people who they're not having the conversations at work that they're used to, or even socially out walking around. And so they're a lot more likely to want to network with you and to have conversations and to learn about you. And if you do that well, then they might want to refer you to a role in their company. So I think there's a lot of ways to approach what's going on. And if you have a bit of curiosity and you recognize that it's all solvable, right? It just requires that you are willing to put in the effort to solve the problem. Yeah.
That's very valuable advice
Thank you.
for the students how to network and how to connect with people on LinkedIn and other
Right.
social media channels. But what if we change our focus now towards the companies?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a tough time for the companies as well, who are looking for the customers. So
Right.
how would you recommend those companies to identify the why for their clients? What is their customer really looking for, and what is the process, how they can really identify what is my customer looking for today?
Right. So that's putting on my product manager hat for the moment. So that's always the product question, right? And for me, it's again, back to curiosity. It's about asking a lot of people a lot of questions a lot of why questions, a lot of pain point questions, and I tend to, I want as diverse an audience as I can get to find out about how they see this. So with the HAERT program, our education around mental wellness for high school students, we started down this path initially because high school students actually came to us and asked us for a curriculum. We'd been working on a curriculum for adults, and through networking, mad props for networking, by the way, high school students learned about what we were doing. They asked us if we could help. We met with them and talked with them and said, yes, we can. Then we found out, okay, what is it their administrators want? What do their teachers want? What does the on-campus mental health team want in terms of the initial, most bare bones kind of product requirements? And so we had a starting point, right, which was our starting hypothesis. And then we went out into the world and started talking to other people that were around that ecosystem. We talked with their students, we talked with other school administrators, we talked with teachers, we talked with parents, and in a way, I see that as a never-ending process of discovery. And yeah, over time, you won't be necessarily getting as big ahas as you do on day one, but those ahas are still there and they're still available, and you're still going to learn better and better things about how the customer base is shifting, right? How people's perspectives are changing. Google owns search, and they still work on how do we make it better, right? How do we make our customers happier with search? Amazon owns retail, and they could stop doing all their experiments and they're learning about customers, but they don't, right? They still do surveys. They still ask questions of people because they want to learn. They're not calling us on the phone so much anymore, but they're doing it in other ways. So I think, especially now, reaching out for companies to be proactive about reaching out to their clients and saying, hey, we know that life is tough, strange, different. How can we help you? What's going on in your world that's in any way related to this stuff that we're doing? And recognizing that some of those answers they might not be able to help with, right? Zoom reached out to people and they probably got some answers that were like, oh my God, I really want toilet paper, or I need bottled water, or I need fresh vegetables, right? Zoom's not so much in those kinds of businesses, but it helps them understand their clients. And if nothing else, it helps to establish a human connection between the vendor and the customer. And that human connection is actually really valuable for the customer to stay stuck to you as a company, and lifetime customer value, which is kind of what you got to be thinking about at a time like this, is what's our lifetime customer value, not just what's one transaction. And so I think companies should do the hard work, and I'm putting hard in air quotes, of personally, individually reaching out to customers to hear what's going on for them, what their challenges are, where they're finding surprise successes, and leverage that in terms of, okay, how do we improve our product, right? What are the ways that we can get new visibility into our clients' pain points, and what are all the different stories, not just the negative stories, but what are the positive stories, right? So I bicycle a lot. And right now, one of the things that I'm really happy with about COVID is that there's a lot less cars on the road. So I have a lot fewer chances of getting hit by a car, number one. And number two, the air is way, way cleaner. And so those are a couple of really cool upsides that I'm thankful for, despite all the negative stuff that's going on.
To your point around feedback, I would just want more around that. So sometimes the feedback is very positive. You are very happy that you have done a great job.
Yep.
Sometimes the customer is either confused, or as you mentioned, like somebody might have called Zoom and said, we need vegetables. But
Right.
Then there is a third option that is very important, the negative criticism that comes around.
Sure.
And negative reviews travel a lot, so you need to handle them. What would be your tips as a product manager that you worked on, how to negate them, and if some comes up, what is the best way to resolve them? Because you can't resolve everything, you can't make everybody happy. So what would be the best way to resolve, or to see how you can keep the situation under control?
So I think the starting point is thanking people, is having appreciation for their courage and vulnerability, excuse me, for their courage and vulnerability in giving you a negative review, right? Part of what we have to do as product managers, as entrepreneurs, as customer support, sales, whatever it is have the confidence to recognize that our products are good, number one. And number two, not every product is perfect for every customer. And so a customer who's upset about the product, that's an opportunity for us to learn. And thank you very much. I really appreciate your feedback. And what's the pain point? How do we resolve this in a way that you'll be happy? And how do we either figure out a way to have this work out for everybody? There's a great book called Hug Your Haters that's probably 5 years old by now, that has a great series of case studies about how companies have really approached the idea of negative reviews and flip those people around from negative to positive by going all in on figuring out how to make them happy. And it's not perfect. There's no 100% success, but making that effort has some really interesting ROI, because when you actually do it, people are like, oh my God, somebody really cares about me, right? And so you may spend time and money to make that customer happy, but what you don't recognize is that they go from writing a negative review to writing an amazingly glowing review. And people read that and they're like, holy cow, this company really takes care of their customers really, really well. Years ago, I worked at a company where the company founders were adamant that either you loved them or you didn't work with them. And they would, if it was clear that the relationship wasn't going to work, they just gave back everything the customer had given them, gave them back all their money, even if they delivered the product or the service. And that was it. No harm, no foul. And it worked out really, really well. That company made, there were a few things. Everybody in the company knew that we were focused on happy customers, right? All the way from, whoever's answering the phones on the front line, all the way up to whatever level in the company, right? And so we all had a very common mission to make the customers happy. And there was never any question that it was a revenue problem or a cost problem for the company, because we could see that long term we made more money, That was the bottom line, was good, was it made, and every now and then there was a customer we couldn't make happy, and they got fired. One of the executives would reach out to them and would say, look, we really appreciate the time you spent with us, but clearly you're not somebody who's going to be really happy with what we do. And so here's all your money back, and maybe you should go work with those guys over there. And we would direct them to one of our competitors. That didn't happen very often because we did a lot to make our customers happy. And when it did, it really helped us see that we needed to stay focused on the people that really loved us for what we were doing, and not try and make the folks happy that were never going to be happy no matter what we did.
And during this example, you gave a lot of qualities of a leader who is able to develop products according to the needs of the customers, and also the way how to communicate well with those customers. So how can companies create customer-centric leaders, and why are they really very essential, especially in today's market?
I think the starting point is from the top down, inside the company, executives, everybody, to be really clear about their mission of having happy customers and why it's good ROI. And they've got to not just say it, but do it, right? Executives have to be able to walk that talk. I've been fortunate in that a couple of companies that I've worked with have had very strong leaders who were very, very driven by that mission. And part of what in those cases I learned was that when you do that, you can charge a lot more for your services, because you come out of the commodity space, right? You're not a commodity anymore. People don't mind paying extra because they have an emotional connection to you, and they feel good about being there. And it's not about the commodity level of the thing. It's about the feeling. Ferrari is a car brand that pretty much everybody on the planet knows of. Ferraris are just metal and plastic and leather, right? Just like Chevys and Toyotas and Hyundais. But Ferraris sell for a bit more than those other brands because of the emotional feeling, right? And Ferrari is very clear that they're only selling to people that love them. When they announce a new car model, they pre-sell all their cars. When it comes off the factory, there's already a buyer who's paid full price and maybe a little bit more to be one of the rare people that gets one of those 250 or 500 cars, right? And Ferrari's all about the emotional connection. They're the best example that I know of for a company that does this. As far as I know, they're the only car company that I've ever heard of that's never had a sale. You don't get end of the year discounts on Ferraris. And their prices keep going up every year, right? They just keep raising their prices. People keep lining up to pay that dollar amount, right? And if you're not, if you buy a Ferrari and you're like, I guess I really don't like this, it's super easy for you to get rid of it. You can go back to the dealership, they'll probably buy it back from you, right? Because they know there's somebody else who'll take that car off their hands, and they'll make money on the transaction, right? When you've got a top-down perspective of happy customers and emotional connection, then you've got the opportunity to have bigger margins. You've got the opportunity to really optimize your business, and to stay out of the commodity space. Because as soon as your company goes into the commodity space, you're stuck in a race for the bottom of the lowest price, the minimum product functionality that somebody will actually pay for, which means you don't have happy customers. And in the long run, that's a losing race. I'd much rather be in the Ferrari race and competing in that regard than trying to do the cheapest product that I can get from the lowest cost manufacturing or lowest cost developers that just barely meets my customers' needs. That doesn't seem like a happy place for me.
So if I were to ask you, during the last 5 months, during the time that we had this pandemic and it's continuing, which one company comes to your mind that you see has become totally a customer-centric company?
Amazon has done a really good job of that. And I think they've always been customer-centric. And they're doing everything they can to try and keep moving ahead as the world changes, right? With delivery and product and manufacturing and everything else. So I think they've done a very, very good job of it. I think completely the other end of the spectrum, the local grocery stores, I think have also done a really good job, especially considering they've got a physical space where you're walking in the door, right? And they're trying to figure out, knowing that in terms of a cross-contamination vector, going grocery shopping is one of the more risky things you can do in this day and age, because a lot of people are walking in and out of that building. A lot of people are touching things. It's very hard to maintain the sanitary conditions for all the people that are going in and out. And I think the grocery stores have done a really good job of coming up with processes and practices and everything they could think of to have stuff be clean and also have customers be able to get fresh vegetables, right? So I think those are two areas where the companies have moved rapidly to have it be as easy as possible for people to still operate, considering the change. So I think the grocery stores are doing a great job of adapting and taking care of their clientele. I think other companies that aren't impacted, like gas stations, are still operating the same way they did before, right? Gas stations are super easy. They're contactless to begin with. I'm trying to think who else has done I think that's and then, I actually feel sorry for the restaurant business, because, earlier when you were talking about you'd like to go out and have a meal, but you're worried about getting sick, right? That's all those guys that have restaurants, they really want you to get out and come see them and have dinner or breakfast or lunch or all the above, but you and a lot of other people aren't get ready to do that. I think that's going to be a real challenge. Is restaurants are an obvious one, but what about the dry cleaners? People don't need to have their clothes dry cleaned because they're not going anywhere. There's no meetings they're going to. They don't have a suit that needs to be dry cleaned. I'm sure auto mechanics are seeing a lot less business now because people aren't driving, right? I don't need an oil change because my car's got no mileage on it in the last month, pretty much. And so I think that's another, interesting business of okay, what's happening? How do we keep those guys around?
Nice, very nice thoughts, Bill, and it was great to learn from you around defining your why, persistence, and then finally around customer-centric leadership. And it was a pleasure having you today.
Thank you. It's been nice talking with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about the HAERT program, which is a thing that we're building right now that's teaching high school kids all these skills that they need to operate well in the world when they get out of high school. It's their emotional resilience, it's how to find their why. It's how to be good leaders, how to be able to experiment and try things and see the beauty in and the value in taking risks and trying experiments and failing, but hey, what do I learn from this, right? And not being so concerned about, oh my God, I might get this wrong. Our program runs 4 years. It's for, like I said, it's for high school students. Right now, we're looking for more schools who want to get into this kind of thing. If you happen to be a school teacher, you're in the school world, this is a social emotional education product, definitely. And we're more than happy to talk with folks. You can reach me, Bill at uplevel.works, UPLEVEL.works, WORKS, or HAERTprogram.com is our website. Everything is digital online, so it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Teachers don't have to learn anything with our program. Talking about customers earlier, one of the things that we learned was that there's a lot of stuff around social emotional learning that teachers have enough of what they're already teaching, like math or history or English, that they don't really want to go down learning all this social emotional stuff to be able to teach it in their own classes. And so we've solved that problem for them. They don't have to do anything other than press play on a video via a browser. It's all web-based, so it makes it super easy for them to use. And we're excited and looking forward to doing more of this stuff. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you everyone, and I'm looking forward to having you all on the next episode of SkillRanch podcast.